Hey there, and welcome to today's Explainer. If you've ever felt like, retirement is just this thing that happens to other people, or maybe you're sitting there starting from absolute zero and just feeling totally overwhelmed, take a deep breath. Seriously, today we're going to look at this exactly how I would with a client sitting across my desk through the lens of a patient, long-term financial advisor. We're going to strip away all that anxiety, all the guesswork, and just look at the raw, unemotional math of building a $1 million retirement portfolio. You don't need a Wall Street background for this. Just follow along as we unpack the blueprints together. Okay, let's kick things off with what is probably the most crucial question you can ask yourself. How much do you actually need to invest every single day to hit that cool $1 million? Most folks guess way off here. They either shoot way too high, which makes the whole thing feel impossible, or way too low, basically setting themselves up for a huge shortfall. But once you see the actual daily number, I promise you, it's going to completely flip how you look at almost every financial decision you make from here on out. So, here's our roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll start with 1, the $1 million destination. Then 2, the 3 Fidelity funds. 3, 30 years patient wealth. 4, 20 years, the compromise. 5, 10 years aggressive sprint. And finally, 6, the ultimate time trade-off. Let's get into it. Section 1, the $1 million destination. Let's talk about why exactly $1 million is our magic number. The reason this specific destination matters so much comes down to something called the 4% rule. This is a retirement strategy that's backed by decades of solid research, and the concept is beautifully simple. Listen to this. If you have $1 million invested in a broad index fund portfolio, you can safely pull out 4% of it in your first year of retirement. That's $40,000, money you literally did not have to clock in to earn. And the reason this works without bleeding your account dry, it's because the market typically grows faster than 4%. So while you're pulling out your $40K to live on, your portfolio is just quietly growing in the background, keeping your principal totally intact. Basically, that's a passive income of $3,333 every single month. But wait, it gets even better. When you stack the average Social Security check, which sits at about $2,076 a month right now, on top of that monthly withdrawal, your retirement income suddenly jumps to over $5,400 a month. That is exactly the kind of reliable, steady income that gives you true peace of mind. So, $1 million is our destination. The question now is, how do we actually get there? That brings us to Section 2, the 3 Fidelity funds. These are the building blocks for our journey. Let's open up this Fidelity toolkit. First up, we've got FXAIX, the Fidelity 500 Index Fund. Think of this as your safe foundation. It tracks the S&P 500, meaning you're basically buying a tiny slice of the 500 largest companies in the American economy. It's boring, it's reliable, and it's averaged about a 12.97% annual appreciation over the last 10 years. Next up is FNCMX, the Nasdaq Composite Index Fund. This is our growth bridge. It leans a lot heavier on tech and biotech, companies that grow faster but, come with a bit more of a roller coaster ride in terms of volatility. It's averaged 16.91%. And finally, we have our aggressive wild card, FSLEX, the Select Semiconductors portfolio. Now, this one only invests in chip makers. It is highly cyclical and undeniably risky. I mean, when it crashes hard. But over the last 10 years, it's averaged an absolutely astonishing 22.04% annual appreciation. Moving on to Section 3, 30 years, patient wealth. This is all about letting time do the heavy lifting. Take a look at this allocation. With 30 years on our side, the math is doing the heavy lifting, right? So we don't really need to take any massive swing-for-the-fences risks. Our safe foundation, the S&P 500 fund, dominates here at 60%. The Nasdaq Growth Fund sits at a comfortable 30%. And that risky semiconductor wildcard? It's just a tiny 10% slice of the pie. When you blend all that together, this portfolio yields an annual share price appreciation of just over 15%, which lets your wealth steadily compound with really minimal risk. So what's the actual daily cost to make this 30-year blueprint a reality? Guys, it's just $6 a day. Think about that for a second. For roughly the price of a fancy morning coffee and maybe a bagel, you are literally funding a $1 million retirement. Let's look at a hypothetical investor. We'll call him John. Over 30 years, putting in his $6 a day, John only contributes $65,700 of his actual own money. But the market? The market adds a staggering $938,450 to bring his final total to just over $1,004,150. That right there is the emotional core of compounding. You aren't really the one building the wealth, you're just the one showing up consistently. Time is doing all the actual labor for you. All right, Section 4, 20 years, the compromise. This is a realistic path for late starters. Notice the shift we have to make here. Because we've cut our compounding's runway by a full third, we need this portfolio to grow much faster. So our broad, safe market fund shrinks from 60% down to 35%. The growth fund has to expand to 40%, taking the lead as our largest piece. And that risky semiconductor fund, it more than doubles to 25%. This shift in our toolkit pushes our expected annual returns up to 16.81%. Now, to make this work over a 20-year timeline, your new daily cost bumps up to $22. That's about $660 a month. Honestly, it's a real number. It demands skipping a few restaurant meals, maybe rethinking a car payment, or canceling those streaming subscriptions you never use anyway. But it absolutely remains a very doable number for a lot of households. Let's see how this stacks up against our first scenario. By buying back 10 years of lost time, John now has to contribute $160,600 straight out of his own pocket to cross that exact same $1 million finish line. Now, don't get me wrong, the market is still doing a massive amount of heavy lifting here, adding over $880,000, but John is paying almost 2.5 times more of his own cash than he did in the 30-year plan. You're essentially paying out of pocket for the time you didn't give your money to grow. Section 5. 10 years. Aggressive sprint. We're looking at the incredibly high cost of a short runway. Now, I gotta be straight with you, this path is absolutely not for everyone. Look at the dramatic shift in allocation we need here. Our safe S&P 500 foundation has plummeted to a mere 15%. Half the entire portfolio, literally 50%, is now this highly concentrated, risky bet on the semiconductor sector. Why? Because the broad market alone simply cannot get you to $1 million in just 10 years. We have to force an aggressive growth rate of nearly 19%, and we have to lean extremely hard on our wildcard fund to make that happen. And here is the stark, brutal reality of the daily cost for this sprint, $120 a day. That is roughly $3,650 a month, every single month for 10 straight years. Realistically, you need a household income of around $120,000 to safely afford this kind of aggressive sprint without, sacrificing your rent, groceries, or basic life necessities. And look, if you can't afford that, there is absolutely zero shame in it. It just means the 20 or 30-year plans are simply the better fit for your actual life. But if you can afford it, look at what it requires. To hit $1 million in a decade, John is writing a check out of his own bank account for nearly $500,000, $438,000 to be exact. The market adds about $645,000. Do you see how that gap is almost completely gone? John is practically matching the market dollar for dollar here. That, my friends, is the high cost of a short runway. Section 6, the ultimate time trade-off. Let's talk about the true price of waiting to invest. Walk through this side-by-side comparison with me because this is absolutely crucial. Look at the brutal, unemotional math of that right-hand column, the market's return on your dollar. In our 30-year plan, for every dollar you invest, the market hands you $14 back. If you shrink your timeline to 20 years, the market only gives you $5.50 back for every dollar. And if you wait until you only have 10 years left, the market gives you a measly $1.50 for every dollar you put in. The destination is exactly the same, but the sheer effort required to get there drastically changes. This visually hits the nail on the head for my core thesis as an advisor. Look at how the literal out-of-pocket price tag absolutely skyrockets the longer you wait to begin. It jumps from $65,000 way up to $160,000, all the way to nearly $438,000. You are paying a massive, massive premium for the time you lost. Which leads me to this final piece of advisor wisdom. Time isn't free, but it's the cheapest source of retirement money there is. The longer you give compounding the room to do its job, the less of your own hard-earned paycheck actually has to find your destination. So I'm going to leave you with this question to really chew on. Which timeline are you going to commit to today? The math is crystal clear, the tools are sitting right there waiting for you, and that destination of peace and security, it is entirely achievable. It really just depends on the path that best fits the life you want to build. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Start early, stay patient, and let time do the heavy lifting for you.